What's up, guys, and welcome back to the NRL Fantasy Scout Podcast. I'm your host, Connor, and today I'm joined by Artemis. How are you going?
Good mate.
And we're also joined by Sandro. How are you, Sandro?
Not bad. How are you going, Connor?
Yeah, I'm good. Excited for another episode. Today's a lot trickier talking about these centers, but hopefully we can find some good options in the raft. On today's podcast, as I mentioned, we're looking at the centers. Remember, if you're enjoying the preseason podcasts, please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below any thoughts or feedback you may have for us. If you're listening on Spotify, please leave a 5-star review. Every rating goes a long way and we really appreciate it. If you want to subscribe to our premium service, where you can have access to unlimited personal team advice, accurate player projections, in depth player previews, and much more, we are running a preseason discount at the moment. So if you're interested, there's a link in the show description to sign up. Now, the centers are arguably the worst scorers in the game. They tend to have the least base out of all positions and need a lot of attacking stats. In such a position, does this mean you go cheap, or is it worth spending up for the proven guns and peace of mind? Artemis?
I think you mentioned it right at the beginning. I think the center position this is it's a bit trickier compared to last year, definitely. I feel like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like there were a lot more mid-range players that we could pick from last year. But I think the approach I'm taking is I'd like to have one premium and one cheapie. Do I want to spend big of Herbie? I've got him in my team at the moment, but I am considering taking him out um, for Kuraz, who we'll talk about later in the podcast. And then definitely I'll be going for a cheapie, who at the moment I've got Penasini, but we'll discuss the the mid value range and cheap options as well later on.
Yeah, nice. And your thoughts, Sandro? How do you approach center? And does it change this year?
So in the past, I usually always just try and target um, back rowers that have center position, the DPP players. And if that isn't suitable, then I typically just go really cheap because center is the worst scoring position. And I have continued my trend. I have a back rower who's available at center this year in my team. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, that's my strategy usually.
Yeah, like you, I always spend cheap as it's the worst position, unless there is a gun with a center dual position, like Dylan Lucas, the Bo Fermors, even the Adam Deweys of last year. Usually by end game, we'd always aim to have two edges in our centers, like the days of Bateman and stuff. But this year, it's pretty much impossible with a lot of dual positions removed, unless Purdue becomes a gun. Realistically, you're going to have an actual center to finish the game. However, after a breakout year with Herbie, there are two questions, in my opinion, that remain. The first being, can he maintain his 60 plus scoring form? And the second being, who is the ideal partner for him in the centers in your team? Now, speaking of Herbie, this perfectly segments into our first player of the episode. Herbie coming in at 800k, owned by 22% of people. He's currently in Artemis's and my team. So why are you fading him, Sandro? Can that change?
Pretty set on not having him. It's just I don't see him scoring the same as what he did last year. He was just so impressive. Um, Even if he drops down to like high fifties average, he's going to lose quite a lot of money. So I'm hoping to pick him up later on for a cheaper price.
Yeah, I think I've thought about it a little bit more. Like I was really set on Herbie, but then thinking about it, I don't. I mean, I would expect Herbie to have the same sort of season as he did last year, but I do see him dropping a little bit in value, and I see that probably if it's going to happen, it'll be at the beginning of the year. So I'd rather wait a bit, and then pick him up around mid-season, maybe towards the end of the year, because at the moment I've got him. It's 800,000 for a center. It's too expensive, but it means with my team at the moment I've had to spend pretty less. Um, on my win fullbacks, which I'm not too pleased with. So I think I'll drop Herbie and go with a premium who's slightly cheaper, but will get me consistent scores. So yeah, that's my thoughts on him at the moment.
Right. Now, if you're watching the YouTube video, you can see me smiling, but if you're listening on the podcast, I'm grinning from ear to ear because I'm about to play devil's advocate. Now, last year, let me drop some stats. Herbie only had 2 games under 50 points last year. One of them, he only played 18 minutes in and still scored 45. First 2 fixtures, he plays Souths, who have an awful right edge defense, and he plays the Gold Coast Titans in round 2. Everyone's saying, oh, he can drop price, and that could be the case. But if he has 2 banging games to start the year, then when the tough fixtures comes round 3 to 5, it doesn't matter. He'll in fact go up or still remain around the 800k mark. Now for the Dolphins, I reckon Izzy Couture takes a step forward. They got a better forward pack and they can build off the back of it. Their left side is their strong side. They'll continue to go to Herbie. And finally, more important for fantasy, when you think, oh, am I spending 800k on a center? You got to think about combinations instead. So, is it more worthwhile spending 600k on Perez and 600k on another gun like Reece Walsh, being 1.2 mil, 1.3 when you add up the 50s and stuff? Or is it worth spending money on Herbie and a Jai Gray per se, someone in that mid 500 range? Now I've crunched the numbers, and more times than not, actually every time, Herbie and the mid-ranger, like a Jai Gray, will average 5 more points a game than the Perez and another wing fullback, because Herbie's base and scoring is just that superior. This is all banking that I think he maintains his form. But before we move on, what are your thoughts on that, boys?
Um, I see where you're coming from, but it's 800k. It's a lot of money for a center. Um, I would, I think I'd rather like a Kieraz and someone else, because if someone else has value, like I just don't think Herbie's value. That's the matter of fact.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I'd rather spend 600k Carraz and then 600k on Edwards or Reece Walsh, personally. Um, but yeah, that's the way I'm leaning. So I know you're taking a different approach, Connor, but I guess we'll see how we start the season.
We shall see. I will see if Herbie continues to burn everyone's ranks like last year, him and Aaron Clark. But to be decided. Next up is your boy Jacob Carraz. You have him, Sandro?
Yeah, I do.
Alright. Why do you have him?
Um, the DPP is pretty massive. He can play center or wing fullback in your team. He's a very reliable player. His base is incredible. He's under a bit of an injury cloud, but I think that's sort of been blown out of proportion. I think he's all good. Um, Feel good. Feel good said recently that he's having one of his best preseasons ever, which is pretty big raps for someone who's already so good. So yeah, I really like him, and he's in my team. Probably won't leave.
Yeah, I'm going to be bringing him in definitely. He's got very good base. He loves an offload. I think I was having a look. I think every game he played last season, he had at least one offload, I believe. But the only annoying thing is the buy in round 2, which I didn't realize. But as long as you've got cover on the bench, and you'll be fine. But yeah, other than that, I'd say he's pretty good choice to have, other than Herbie, if you don't want to go and spend that much on Herbie.
Yeah. Well, coming in at 664k, it's still a lot to spend on a center. The very good thing is he has that dual position, but I don't think it's as crucial as we believe, because I think Chester, Vale, players like that will get dual position before round 1 when they're announced in the lineup. It's a big assumption they make the lineup, but I think they will. The only issue is I have with Karaz in games where he doesn't score tries, his scoring is it averages in the mid 40s at all his winger games. This is excluding his center and fullback games, but without tries, I don't think his average is too good. So
I think that's pretty good personally for a wing fullback, don't you think?
yeah, but
Like mid 40s in
it's
base.
it's good, but he's priced at 53. So that's
Yeah,
actually a loss of 8 points.
yeah. I agree. There's
Especially,
no value, but sometimes you have to pick players that aren't value. That's how I see it.
that's fair.
Es- I think
Which is
especially
why I'm
because
picking Herbie, Sandro. But anyway,
yeah,
That's different.
go
yeah.
Artemis.
No, I was gonna say like sometimes you have to sacrifice that, especially in a position like center, where there's not as many value options. Sometimes you got to take a player like Carraz, who will give you the
That's
consistent
true.
40, 50s.
That's true. And the thing is, I do really like Karaz, but the only annoying thing is, yes, the buy in round two, but round one he plays Vegas, which is a lot harder for your backs to score those tries because of the smaller fields. So, whilst you boys are waiting on Farnworth to drop in price, I'm waiting for Karaz to drop in price and then buy him. Honestly, you could probably pick him up in round five, I reckon, for
5
550k.
onwards. Yeah,
But that's my prediction. He could score.
550.
Yeah. I think if he has a poor start, he could drop
Mm.
a bit. But then again, this is my projection of how Vegas is going to go. He could absolutely score 4 tries and go the other way. So what do I know? But that's my thoughts. Next, another try scoring machine, KL Ito, 628k. He scored 9 tries in the first 9 games. Will he continue that form, Artemis?
Well, I saw the stat that I know he did miss a lot of the season last year due to injury, but I think he played 11 games in total, regular season excluding finals, and he scored in like 9 of them. I think he only missed out in two, and even I think he had 4 scores under 50. Two were because he came off with injury, but he did score in those games, I believe. And the other two, he didn't score a try at all, but I think he scored in the 30s. Does he sustain a try again like he did last year? I don't think so. But then again, it wouldn't surprise me. But I'd rather be going for someone, Carraz, who's like a little bit more expensive, where I know I'm going to be getting consistent base. And like you said, Connor, over 40 as compared to Idor, who was like low 30s.
Yeah, I agree with Artemis. I don't want to spend much money on someone when I'm just banking on tries every game pretty much. So he's not for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Perez can at least has that 40 in base. It all we've seen him score high 20s, low 30s without tries, and even in games with tries, he's scored in the 40s, which isn't groundbreaking considering he gets 8 points for a try, maybe a few tackle busts in there. So he's not a one-hit wonder, but he needs those big plays. Sharks, they're a good team, but is that what I want to bank on for 630k? No, I'd rather spend a bit extra personally. Now, we've got Ewan Aitken. He's not looking to make the side, coming in at 610k. What if he does make the side? Or what if later down the line Duncan or Fafita pick up an injury? Is he one of interest, Sandro?
Yeah, he is. I see him in a few fancy teams, but he is expected to play off the bench, so he probably shouldn't be in as popular as he is. But for sure, like with the DPP, if he ever gets that starting role, he'd be a great option. He tends to average low 50s when he plays in the second row.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're just waiting on clarity on role and potential injuries, maybe.
I think as well you mentioned Connor, say he starts the season off the bench and then Duncan or Fafita pick up an injury halfway through the season. If he's getting 20, 30 minutes each game coming off the bench, his price is going to drop a lot. So when there is an injury, he's going to be a very nice pickup.
Yeah. And the interesting thing now is with the new bench rules, where once you use those 4 subs, they have to be your 4 subs in a 5-person bench. Is it correct?
Six,
6-person
6,
bench. Sorry, 19. Yep. Um. So I don't think Aiken will be playing any minutes personally to start the year. Maybe the last 10 when South think they're in the clear, but I think there'll be a lot less edge substitutions this year as an impact with these rules. I think even maybe gone are the days of utility hookers and stuff. South is a bit different because Cheese can play in the middle and stuff, but yeah, I think Aiken will bleed a lot to start the year based on that new rule change. But definitely one to pick up. Maybe around Origin time if Fafita breaks back into Queensland side. Who knows? Right, that wraps up the premiums. Now we're moving into the mid ranges. One of our favourite buy plays over the year, but not looking too good this year. Ruben Garrick comes in mid 500Ks. Another dual position. Is he worth it, Sandro?
Nah, the signing of Fogarty means Garrick's likely to lose goal kicking, so that takes off a fair chunk of his base. So probably overpriced at this stage.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think he'll need a try to bring his score up to around his average, maybe a bit higher. But without a try and without the goal kicking duties, the scores he'll be putting up, I don't believe will be that good. So for that reason, unfortunately, because I've always had him, normally he was always the first center I would go for. But yeah, this season I'm fading him.
Yeah, I agree. Even around that buy period, I don't think a lot of us will be buying Garrick per se, because it was always one of those good gun gun options that didn't make Origin. But this year, no goal kicking. I think Manly have a fall off in attack and score a lot less tries. Or if it does, there'll probably be a lot more short ball, or it will just go straight out the back to Tommy. So Garrick, not for me. We have another sort of fallen gun, but still does well in Dane Gagai. Will the new look Knights revitalize his attacking output, Artemis?
Uh, I don't believe so. Um, Last year he had a lot of inconsistent scores, and I see him having a very similar season this year. I know there were some games he even played at fullback as well, but it's just the inconsistency. I don't like. And if I am gonna go for a Newcastle centre, I'd be wanting to spend that little bit extra, and I'll be going with the best over Gagai.
Yeah. The guy came back down to earth a bit last year. In 2023 and 24, he scored 50 plus over the season. Um, Maybe he's just getting older. That's why he dropped in average. I'm not too sure. Um, and also probably with the Knights left edge, it's going to be getting a lot of ball. This guy maybe struggle on the right to get good ball. Maybe I'm not too sure.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tough one because the Knights attack did stink on ice last year, but to help his average, there was that 6 or 7 game stint that he played at fullback, and I remember him scoring really well then. That being said, if the Knights do score a couple more tries, he could easily go back not to 50s, but high 40s per se. But again, just purely based on age, athleticism, and the side with much more ball, especially now Kaipi's Paul's gone, so that's another reason to shift to the left. I would rather spend money on Badman Best. Now we go down south to Melbourne. Nick Meaney, not one who's usually talked about, but now with Pappenhausen retiring, he's getting the goal kicking tee. Does that increase in points give him a bit of value, Sandro?
At first, I thought potentially, but then I just looked at his stats properly, and he actually kicked already quite a bit because obviously Pappenhausen was injured quite a bit. So like the goal kicking is already priced into his average. So there's no value there, I don't think.
Yeah, no, that was the same as me. I had a look at his stats in the last season. I saw he was doing a lot of the kicking, and it's just a lot of inconsistency again. He had some 60 scores and then some in his 20s and teens. And for me, I don't want to be spending that much for someone who's going to be putting up consistent scores. If that's the case, I'd rather spend 100k cheaper or a little bit more on someone who'll be putting up those sort of scores compared to Meany.
Yes, so last year in all the games he played, it looks like he's played about 20, I say. There were only 8 games he didn't kick in, so more than half, 60% of his games, he had the goal kicking tee. And he was still dropping scores like 25, 36, I'm seeing here 34. Yes, he can do well when the Knights, not when the Knights, pardon me, when Storm do well. But as I'm looking here, he scored 19 with a try, and that just does not do it for me. Now, I'm sorry for laughing, but Casey McLean, for some reason, is owned by more than a quarter of fantasy coaches. I personally don't get it, but Sandro, do you care to explain maybe why he's that? Maybe they got confused with his bro. I don't know. Please make it make sense.
I'd love to know as well. Honestly, I'm a bit amused by it actually. It's quite strange. Um, I imagine it has to do with maybe the Pacific Championships. Like he was pretty good playing for New Zealand there, but I just feel like he's one of those players that is like really good in real life, but doesn't translate to fantasy. He's priced at 38. Like I don't really expect his scoring to change too much. So yeah, it's pretty wild. He's that highly owned.
Yeah, I agree. And I was actually, well, when I was making my team and having a look, I saw the amount of percentage he was owned. And I thought I'd look into it in case I was missing something. But I had a look. There was a couple games back in the last season, he scored a double. And he only scored 48 and like 43. And if I want my center to be scoring a double, I don't expect them to be putting up those sort of scores. Yeah, maybe there might be a little bit of value, but I don't think it's worth it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that because in the back end, when Penrith were doing well, he did average 46 points. But in only one of those last 8 games, he blanked. Every other game, he scored a try, and or two. There were actually 3 games he scored a brace in, and he got 43, 48, and 58. 58's good. But if that's the case where I need this player to score a try, that automatically turns me against them personally because fair enough if they need line breaks and stuff, but to score tries every week, that's a lot harder unless you're Alex Johnston, but still it's pretty hard to maintain. So, yeah, maybe that's what the 26% of coaches were looking at. Now, another interesting option, he broke out last year after sucking to start the season. Jackson Purdue comes in at 468k, but the interesting thing is this year he's projected to play in the halves. He's one of the players with a dual position in half and centre. Is he a dual position of value, Sandro?
He could be, but it seems incredibly risky to start off with. Yeah, expected to play in the halves, but Jake Clifford actually looked pretty good in the trial in the first week. Maybe Purge even goes back to center. But yeah, there's just too many question marks. If he does play in the halves, like how much will he kick? We don't even know what side he'll be on. Like him and Dearden sort of changed what side they're on last year. So then we don't know who the back rows are, etc. So there's too many question marks for my liking. Is a wait and see, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It's all up in the air. So until we get more clarity. But I was having a look when he was playing at center last year, he was averaging 38. If there's news that he doesn't start in the halves, Jake Clifford starts, and then he moves to center. A, would you buy him? And B, who do you think misses out? Is it Labert?
I think it'd be Chester.
or Chester?
I think,
Mm,
yeah,
yeah,
it could be bad for,
yeah,
yeah, Chester's a cash cow that we
yeah,
might lose. Yeah, I wouldn't
Yeah,
buy him though, even at center. He's probably a slightly better scorer at center. I agree with that, but
yeah.
he's priced at 37, so
There's
probably
not
not
much.
value. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. As a Purdue owner for a lot of the season last year, he was a very streaky scorer. It was great when he just banged out like 370s in a row. That was great. Got a lot of money, but he actually did play quite a bit of halves last year, and he's priced at 37, but in the halves he averaged 33. So that's already not looking good. Yes, he does score better at center, but I disagree with you guys. You think he's a wait and see. I think we've seen enough and avoid. May,
is
may,
that a definite Connor?
yep, that's definite. Clip that. Yeah, no Purdue this year. Another streaky player, Isaac Bangor. He was looking good in round one last year, but then after that he fell right off a cliff. Will he go back to good ways with Penrith, potentially going back to their premiership strength form, Artemis?
I hope so, but personally, I just don't see it happening. Like you mentioned, he had a very streaky year last year, and he scored a try, but only got like 20 points in one of the games and like 29. But if he can return to the average that he was getting, I think it was around, was it high 40s, early 50s, if I'm not wrong. If he can get to those, if he can start the season that way, he could be a nice pickup. But I just, I don't see it happening personally.
yeah. It was back in 2023. We had a great season. He averaged 49. We just never been able to really replicate that form. He's had a bit of fantasy relevance the last 2 years because we were sort of waiting for him to go back to that form, but it just never happened. Like he even got benched, got dropped to the bench one game last year. So I actually reckon like if he plays poorly again, there's a chance like he could get dropped for Tom Jenkins or someone like that. So I'm not prepared to take the risk on him.
True. But the interesting thing is, when Penrith started to pick up form at the end of last year, it was Alamotti they dropped from the squad, but then they brought him back in for the finals for that experience over Jenkins on the wing. Let me read out a stat to you boys. In the last, when Penrith were doing good last year, in the last 10 games per se, from round 17 onwards, Bangor averaged 49 points. Now, we did score a fair amount of tries, but priced at 36, I am happy to take a punt on him. That being said, there's a lot of risk, and I'm personally not starting with him. But around that price point, for me, he'd be around that top three. And if you wanted to go pod, he's a good option, I reckon, because I think Penrith are still going to continue their form from the back end of last year, and in doing so, Pungal will reap the benefits from it.
So you
I
take,
don't hate it, but I thought you got
yeah,
him.
no, I don't know, you go.
I was gonna say I don't hate it, but there's a few players I have in front of him. He'd probably be like
Yeah,
towards the lower end of my potential pods.
yeah, no, I agree. But are you saying, Connor, that those 24% of fantasy players should be hopping on Tugboat instead of McLean?
Definitely, if you're going for a Penrith centre, go for Pungal, not McLean. That's my opinion. But yes, Pungal, not McLean. You all picked the wrong one. Next, Jack Howarth. I'll be honest, I don't know why he's in the notes, but Sandro, maybe you can explain it. I don't think he's been fantasy relevant, especially as a center. But is this the year he switches position?
Well, that's why I put him. Like, there's been some speculation that with obviously Eli Katoa out, so instead of maybe putting Lasardi or Chan, they could move someone like Howarth to the back row spot and then put like a Moses Leo or Marion Survey in the centers. So if that would eventuate, then he'd become a really good option. but it seems unlikely at this stage.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, look, his scores at center aren't the greatest. So if he's starting at center again, I wouldn't be going with him. But if he does move to edge, I'd like to wait and see how he goes at edge, see if he's getting the full 80 minutes as well, and then if he's doing well getting the minutes, then hop on him. But at center, I wouldn't.
There, I don't see him playing over Lasati or Blore for at least majority of those minutes, but I guess he's a wait and see. Now, this next player, I've talked up quite a bit this preseason. I know you boys were a bit skeptical at first, but I think I've convinced you enough to get him on this list. Campbell Graham, 440k. He's not played much footy over the past 2 years, but now he's playing on South's wing in a new look South side. Will he get back to his low 40 average, giving him 10 points of value? Sandro?
I would have been more keen on him if he didn't have more injury issues. Like he hasn't trained properly in preseason, so there's that injury risk there. He is quite prone to injuries that we've seen. But yeah, now he's moving to the wing, so could see him like get some better base in terms of like running out of yardage when doing kick returns and stuff like that. So that could be good for his running meters. Um, yeah, like I said, I don't mind him, but the injury risk is too high for me to counteract the value, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. I yeah, I don't have much to add to what Sandra said. To be honest, it's just the only thing holding me back is the injury. If he can put a decent string of games together, but in saying that he did last year, and then like he played, I think like 10 games in a row or something like that, and then he got injured. So I think it's just too risky for me. I know his base will be better, and he'll be getting more active in terms of running the ball back from kicks off the wing. But if he does start the season very well and return to that average that we've seen, then I might be hopping on, but I won't be starting with him.
Yeah, I do think he will average low 40s this year. It's more a matter of how many games go into that low 40s average. There is a big injury risk. The past 2 years, he has not played much footy. But in terms of his improvement, one, as you both mentioned, the crap yards when, they kick to the corner. Campbell Graham's got the biggest frame in the South's back line, excluding Latrell, but usually that's wingers and centers' job. So I think Campbell Graham will be the workhorse in that sense over players like AJ. And the other thing is on fifth tackle, he would be the aerial option more often than not because he's really tall, obviously. So he could easily get a couple of try assists, one or two, or even tries, by just contesting for the ball. We know he's got that great aerial game. He's got a big frame, good at running out of yardage. So I personally don't mind him as a punt as well. But the big if is, can he last a full season? As Sandra said, he already hasn't been training properly, so there's a couple of red flags, but another good punt, I'd say. Next, Kurt Capel in the Big 26. He's one of the only ones with edge center dual position, maybe the only one, you can correct me. But at 426k, are his missed tackles the merits one of the past, Sandro?
Um, yeah, like you mentioned, he is the only back rower that's expected to start that has center DPP. There is Ewan Aiken and Talakai, but they're not going to start probably. Yeah, Keiko's an interesting one. Like I touched on earlier, I tend to target those back rowers that have center position in fantasy, and he's in my team currently. Actually, might get some hate for that, but yeah, he's priced at 33.5, and he tends to average high 30s, low 40s when playing strictly at back row. Um, Last year he got moved to center quite a bit, so that brought his average down. But then hopefully this year, I think with the new bench rules might help him out in terms of moving to centre less. And also an interesting thing, the trial today, um, Halasima got named at centre and Capel at back row. Maybe Halasima is a new guy to get shifted out if need be. I'm not too sure, but
Sorry, let
uh,
me just jump in there. Do you really think Leka Halasima, the really big back rower, has more potential to get moved to centre over Kurt Capel? Your genuine thoughts, like if you were picking a
well,
team now, what do
based
you
off the
think?
trial, then why they name it that way if they're not going to do it? They could switch them around.
These trials, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, I agree. Like I would move Capel
Credit.
instead of Halasima in a heartbeat if I was the coach, but I don't know.
Yeah. No, I'm the same. I've been moving Capewell, but what I was going to mention, which Sandro mentioned, was the six-man bench. So I think definitely they had a lot of injuries to the outside backs. So I think definitely they'll have one on the bench. If Capewell doesn't get moved and he's getting the full 80 minutes in second row, then he's priced at 33, averages 38, 39. So there's definitely value there. But I won't be starting with him, and he's not in my team at the moment.
Yeah, that's fair. I agree with that, not starting him. There is definitely that potential that he does well, but from the difference between his price point and what he averaged, it's 6 points, which isn't too much. But when you invest 400 to 450k for someone, you really want them to make that. They need to make that leap to 600k to be of that value. 550 at the very minimum, right? Because usually, correct me if I'm wrong, you want at least 130k increase on your cash cows. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, generally.
Yep. So I don't think he can maintain that 550k price point, which is it mid 40s, Sandro? If I'm
Let's do
550k.
my maths here. Something like that. Yeah, sounds about
Yeah,
right.
it sounds yeah, mid 40s. So I personally don't see him scoring that well. So I personally wouldn't start with him. I like the looks of Bangor more than Capel, just because whilst Capel is the safer option, at this price, you'd rather punt on the bigger option to maybe make that leap up all the way. But that's my thoughts. Finally, another person in contention in a lot of squads. I'm pretty sure in your last preseason reveal videos, you both had him. I know Artemis definitely had him. Will Penasini, why is he in your team, Artemis?
At the moment, yes. It is a bit of a risk, but I am willing to take that for the moment. I know his average has dropped the past two seasons, and when Moses is playing as well, his average is higher compared to when Moses isn't playing. So when Para became a much better team towards the back end of last season, and when Moses was back, his average he was scoring higher. Um, am I begging on the fact that the same thing happens to start the season, where Moses is back, has a good run? Yes, but I'm just for the moment, yes. But if Moses is out and something happens where I find out he's out to start the season, like last season, then I'll probably be taking Penasini out.
Yeah, Penasini is just pretty much you're just gambling on
Yeah.
Para getting better, and obviously with the Moses thing, like you're sort of gambling on Moses' fitness as well. So if Moses is in the team and Para's performance better, then I think Penasini will score well, and he's in my team currently. I think he can return to that low 40s sort of average, which would be close to 10 points of value. So I quite like him at that price.
Yeah, but even last year when he was with Moses, he only averaged 38, which again, it's only 5 points of value. It is better because he is closer to 400k, so you don't need him being a world beater. But even in one of those games, he scored 16 points. Another one, he scored 28. And the 28 was with a try, by the way, might I add. And the concerning thing is, I think, when they played the Knights last year and they won 66-12 in the last round, right? He scored a try and only scored 45 points. So even with Moses, I feel as if it's not enough. But what could benefit him is Lomax leaving because maybe he gets more of the ball, right? Less of there's not as big a star outside him per se, more of a ball hog. So I do like that, but I personally don't see the value in Penasini. Not the value. I would rather save 200k here and spend that on Herbie than invest in one of these 400k players at center. That's just my center philosophy. And that wraps up the mid ranges. Now moving into the cheapies, we have, excuse my pronunciation, Leatua, apologies, 364k. Sandro's laughing, so he can correct me when I pass it over to him. Priced at 29 points. Is there any value there, Sandro?
There's a bit of value here in Ali Leia Tower.
Leia
So
Tower, okay.
yeah, I think so. Um, he's just he's very injury prone player. Like I actually really rate him, but he sort of struggles to stay in that side consistently. He should have the spot because of Rockerberry, who has his own injury issues. Um, but it just depends on his fitness and whether he can sort of get a consistent role in terms of cutting out the merits in his game as well. He's quite like a he's quite prone to missed tackles and errors and that sort of stuff. So you can clean that up, then I don't mind him, but probably not right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just too risky. And when he scored, he in the game fantasy wise, he's done pretty well. But his other scores, I think he scored like under 30 for the rest of the games he's played. So until he cleans up his demerits, um, then I'll be looking at him, and hopefully he stays fit as well to start the season. But I won't be starting with him.
Yeah, he has in one game, playing 80 minutes, he scored 8 points. Now, he doesn't have a good base, nor does he have, yeah, pretty much, the moral of the story, he doesn't have a good base and he purely relies on attacking stats. Now, for him to get attacking stats, that's not too out of fetch, but for now, with Hannah Boyd instead of Luke Metcalf, I would personally fade that idea of him getting more consistent attacking output. Where Metcalf comes in, sure, but again, it's that 10 demerits in points per game. Like you need him to average in the 40s, like 45 to 50 points for his for him to be 10 points of value with those demerits. So unless he cuts those out of his game, which he could with a bit more experience, I don't think he's one of the best options. And if you do own him, I hope he doesn't get demerits, but there have been times in the past, like with Kurt Capel at the Sharks, one game where he got 8 missed tackles in 80 minutes, seeing that minus 16 next to his score, it was awful. And that ruined his price rises. So keep that in mind. If you want a cash cow, is it worth some stats easily being able to kill their price rises? And to wrap up the show, we have Macassini and Fail, one at the Tigers, one at Dragons, both youngsters. There's a big question, will they make the team? If they do make the team, are they worth it? Is it worth punting on Macassini based on what we hear since he has the round one bye? What is the percent they do start? Unpack that all, Sandro.
To unpack here. So at this stage, I, I don't think either will start. Makasini, like you said, with the buy, it makes it really tricky. Because unless we get some concrete information that he is starting, then it's super risky to have him, and then round 2 team list come out and he's not even playing. That would be annoying. And then we thought Fale, whatever his name is, might start, but it looks like maybe Setu 2 might get a jump over him. So yeah, if they're starting, then they're good, but it seems unlikely at this stage, and it's quite risky.
Yeah. Now at the moment, like from my team review, you guys would have seen I've got Farley in my team purely as a placeholder because everything's still up in the air. I'm not going to take the risk with going with Macastini because, as Sandra mentioned, we've got the round 1 bye, but we don't even know if he's going to get the starting role. Um, I'll wait and see what the Dragons lineup is come round 1 for Vegas. See if it's either Farley or um, was it Newen? Was it just the
2.
two? That's
2.
the one. Two. So see out of those two who's playing, and I'll probably go with either one. But yeah,
Yeah, and it should be mentioned because if a lot of people have Fail as their starting center, and if he doesn't play, then they're kind of screwed at that 250k price point. But I will say, don't be alarmed because if Chester is listed as center for round 1, which he will be if he plays, he will get a wing fullback center dual position. So if 2 starts over Fail, you can play Chester in your centers, 2 at fullback, or the Titans guy at fullback. But we'll talk about those 2 options next episode. I personally have both in my side now, but they are both placeholders. I am planning on going with 3 cheap backs. So Chester, as I mentioned, and then whatever the makeup is of whoever makes the squad. But yes, I've invested heavily in a lot of other positions or guns, but yeah, we'll see if they start. They're great options if they do, but that is a big if. And that wraps up another episode. It was a tough position, but hopefully this discussion has helped you. Thank you all for listening to another episode of the podcast. We love and appreciate all your support and feedback. So if you're enjoying the podcast, please like, comment, subscribe, or rate it 5 stars depending on the platform you're listening to it on. In the next episode, we'll be covering the wingers, and it will be the final episode of our preseason series before Vegas kicks off. So we'll try to help you navigate that tough position as well. Don't forget about our limited preseason offer on our premium. The link is in the description. And with that, we'll see you all in the next one.